Hey there, fellow entrepreneurs. I'm Sue, and you've just stepped into Entrepreneurs Gone Wild. Every week, I'll introduce you to a friend of mine, a remarkable entrepreneur who's not just changing the world, but also harnessing a secret weapon, time outdoors. Together, we'll dive into their journey, unpack invaluable business advice, and discover why embracing the wild is not just good for the soul, but also a goldmine for inspiration and innovation. Ready to uncover the secret that's boosting bottom lines and fueling joy? Hit subscribe and join us in the wild. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to introduce Emily Rochelle, a dynamic thought leader who's empowering rural women in their communities. As a host of the Gather and Growth podcast and the facilitator of mastermind groups, Emily's mission is to inspire leaders, thinkers, and dreamers in small towns across the country. With her warm presence, Emily creates safe spaces for women to explore their dreams and break through limiting beliefs. She's sparking a movement of personal growth and community transformation in rural areas. Get ready to be inspired by a woman who's dedicated to helping you build a purposeful, joyful life. Emily, welcome to Entrepreneurs Gone Wild.
Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful introduction.
You're so welcome. I am so glad you're here. This is so cool. I'm rural, you're rural. We're doing things. This is so great.
Us middle of the nowhere girlies, we all find each other.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. All right. So I know a little bit about this now, but so talk a little bit about who you serve and what problems you're solving for them.
Absolutely. So I think in order to answer that question well, I need to give a little bit of context as to what brought me here. And so as I feel like so many people, especially entrepreneurs, can identify with, like I went through most of my life checking the boxes. I'm an Enneagram 3. And on top of that, because of a lot of reasons, I defined so much of my worth in what I was doing for other people as a way to measure my goodness and to receive love. And so if I can just do enough, if I can serve enough, if I can achieve enough, then I will be enough, right? I see you're smiling because this is such a familiar track for a lot of us. Yep. And so, that landed me in the world of education, which looking back is unsurprising because I'm a person that is massively driven by impact. Like, I think some people who identify as achievers, it was like money and stuff like that. No, it was like, if I can help enough people, then I will be good, right?
Yeah.
So I was an elementary school teacher, and then along the line met and married a farmer, and farms don't move, so people do. So I found myself here in a town with 42 other people, 45 minutes from the grocery store in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. And truly, it was like always what I knew that I wanted. I grew up in what I thought was a small town, but for as long as I can remember, have just been magnetized to like wide open spaces and just like being out, seeing green. I had a good upbringing in my neighborhood, but I knew I wanted like feral kids running free. And careful when you say that, because you get what you ask for. My kids are in fact feral and wonderful. And so, I therefore fulfilled the small town dream. They write country songs about the teachers and the farmers, right? Yeah. And everything was good and perfect until it wasn't. And, kind of had this moment of realization of like, this is it. Like, I checked all the boxes. I got married. I had the babies. I have a great career. I'm doing impactful work. Like, why do I feel dead inside?
Yes.
And so in a total divine intervention kind of moment, I found a position at a YMCA about 25 minutes away as a director of youth and family development. And so I spent 4 years in the nonprofit space, which really pushed me outside of what I believed was actually capable for myself. I'm suddenly the marketing department and learning how to run programs and balancing a budget and like hiring and training and leading employees and just really like in rapid fire expanding possibility. And about halfway through my time there, I was simultaneously named top 30 under 30 in the entire YMCA movement, which is cool to notice, not just me being like humble brag, but it was also a moment where I hit an extreme level of burnout again. And so then I just doubled down on this, like, oh my gosh, I thought that I found the thing. Like I left teaching and now I'm here and I thought that this was it. Like there must be something wrong with me, which then like sunk me into this like whole cycle of just like shame and self-loathing. Then had my second child, my daughter. And as many women I can identify with, like suddenly I just was noticing that my body didn't feel like mine anymore, right? Like 2 pregnancies, 2 breastfeeding journeys, like everything is lumpy, like what's going
Everything
on?
goes south.
Yes, exactly, right? And, I'm a product of 90s and 2000s diet culture, and I had tried all of that. And I'm like, now I have this precious baby girl. And like, it is my responsibility to teach her what it looks like to take care of a mind and a body. Like, I cannot be in this cycle of trying to hate myself skinny. Like, that's not what I want. Right. So that defining moment, I can see it clear as day, is what's led me into a health journey that was truly rooted in learning to love and know and honor myself, which brought me into the world of personal growth and development that I didn't even know existed. And so all of a sudden I'm learning like that we have agency over our lives and that we can recreate habits. And I was like setting goals that I thought were impossible. I used to say I was allergic to running, and all of a sudden I'm like training for a half marathon. Like, so it was this total awakening of possibility. And at the same time, I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a farm wife here in the middle of nowhere, which is like this whole nother layer of like intergenerational expectations.
Yeah.
And so I'm like kind of trying to figure out who I am. And like, this is like the height of COVID, and everyone's like in Facebook groups and sharing online. And I'm following all these farm women who are like making me feel so seen and understood. And I'm like getting connected to all these like personal growth kind of things and feeling so seen and understood. But I'm like, there is no one talking about the intersection of these two. And I cannot be the only person who lives in the middle of nowhere who's interested in talking about like gentle parenting or training for half marathon or habits or goals, whatever. And so it was like literally driving home at sunset, having this moment of like, well, why not me?
Ooh, I
right?
love that.
Like, if no one else is doing it and I see it, like, and I should have known at that moment in time, like I was just spiraling myself into this like total new path, but I didn't. I'm like, I just need to find more people like me. So I did what any sane person does in a pandemic. I started an Instagram account, started just talking about myself and creating content about the things that I thought were interesting, but no one in my circle was talking about. And lo and behold, I was right. There's like 14,000 women in small towns and rural communities who care about the things that I care about, right?
Yeah.
And so, that kind of led me into learning how to build a community online and just sharing my story and like really empowering other women in small towns and rural communities to take care of themselves. At the very basic term back then, it was like, you deserve to go on a walk. You deserve to drink water and eat foods that make you feel good and move your body from a place of love and not hatred.
Yes.
And so about a year later, I was like feeling increased tension in my position. I was still internalizing all of the shame around why I was suddenly having so much resistance around things that used to really bring me joy at work. And one of my coworkers was in my office and kind of brought that to my attention. And she was doing it from a place of love, but she's like, you're just not yourself. Like, this project, you said you were going to get this stuff to me last week. Like, what's going on here? Right. Yeah. It was the first time I said out loud, I don't want to be here anymore. Ooh. And it was like, wait, what?
What did my ears just hear? Right.
Right. Exactly. Like I had not even thought that. And she said from a place of, I don't think she meant this in kindness. She's like, well, what are you going to do? Change jobs every 4 years? And it was like this. Yeah, it was this moment that I was like, actually, what's wrong with that? Right. At the time, I didn't know I had ADHD. I didn't know anything about my human design. I just thought that I was like flaky or inconsistent or like couldn't decide what I wanted to do with my life. Looking back, I can see I have always followed my joy professionally, but like in that moment, I was confronted with like, no, on paper, everything is so good. I'm doing meaningful work. I have a great boss. I have a great team. I love the work that I'm doing. I have super flexible hours. I can bring my kids with me. Right. And so fast forward a few months, kind of figured out I was already running a business online without making a dime. And thank goodness my husband was like, yeah, I agree. And I think you could do something with it. And so total leap of faith, left my job and jumped straight into the unknown. And at the time, I thought I would be kind of digging deeper into that realm of like habit coaching or like really helping women in that capacity, and found myself as this new baby entrepreneur in the middle of nowhere who's used to working on teams, loves idea generation, like needs to bounce things around in order to like get to the point, which looking back, I totally understand this all now, but I'm like, I cannot be the only person who is experiencing this. I'm like, venting to my friend in a voice memo about how just frustrated I feel. And she's like, then it sounds like you need to do something about that.
Ooh, good friend.
Right. And so that's began my story of hosting small group masterminds, which then led me into in-person retreats, which then eventually led me to hosting a podcast called Gather and Growth, and doing just all sorts of different work that has ebbed and flowed, but all kind of danced around this idea of helping women really build intentional and purposeful lives. And you and I were talking before we started recording. When I jumped into this world of entrepreneurship, I just really had this unhealthy need that served me well to prove myself, right? And build and do, and like, here, look at me, I'm doing the things I said I was going to do, and I'm successful.
I'm not a total flake.
Right, exactly. And I can really honor that version of myself because it got me to where I am today. But ultimately, I put myself on the fast track to hustle again, and to burnout, and like, which then crash coursed me into starting therapy I was really long overdue for, which then led me down like a functional health journey, which then just really led me into this healing space and confronting really unhealthy addictions to approval and achievement, and like how that again was entangled with my inherent worthiness. And so just as I was really starting to come out on the other side of the depths of hell of that healing journey, I unexpectedly found out I was pregnant.
Oh,
Which was like, oh, you think that you've unpacked this? Let me
Let's
make
see.
you feel like you are in a grave. And I have so much gratitude for that piece of my story, because it really pushed me to practice simplifying and aligning. And like, I don't have to do so much to do meaningful work that I love. And so my daughter just turned 1, and now I feel like that has pushed me into this like alchemy of just really coming home to myself, and then helping other women do the same, right? Like, I still believe it is true that any one of us can accomplish any desire that is on our heart. We can bring anything to fruition, but like, if we don't peel back the layers and deal with the, you know what, that's like pushing us into these unhealthy patterns, then we're just perpetuating cycles. And so it's really been this journey of like stripping away and leaning into these intuitive gifts I didn't know that I had. And, you know, as I was sharing, I think so much of that is like realigning myself, understanding my cycle, my energy, like the way in which I was designed. And like, the reason I was so attracted to being on this show is like, I've always had this tug towards outside, as I think actually everyone does.
Yeah, we
right?
just dampen it a lot.
We just like hustle ourselves into these concrete boxes that we think make us happy. And so I've been having a lot of curiosity around what does it look like to really come home to not only ourselves, but each other as a communal people, and really like these spaces where we were designed to thrive, but we are so deeply disconnected from. And so there's like all these little sprinkles and breadcrumbs that it's like, as soon as you start the willingness to see, that the dots start connecting. And so kind of in this place where I'm just starting to be able to articulate.
Yeah.
Which is really uncomfortable, right? After a lifetime of having all the answers, or knowing where to Google search, or having the easy button, like being comfortable with the unknown and just allowing myself to be a student and being curious and not always knowing exactly what the next step is, has been very fulfilling.
I would imagine. And then too, you're doing it in public. So it's not like, you know, before
Yes.
it would have been like, well, get every duck in a row first, you know, everything carved perfectly, and now we're going to go. But you're creating as you go, right? I mean,
Yes.
and that's a whole other level of vulnerability and authenticity. And I just am delighted that you're doing it, because, you know, like everybody's had it enough with like the perfect Instagrammable everything. Like we want real, we crave that real. I don't think you're going to get anybody more real than the ladies that you're serving. The rural, like they are, you know, this is like salt of the earth is the perfect example, you know, perfect phrase for them. So, all right, so you've got retreats for them, you've got masterminds. Like, what are they coming for? Like, what are they? Yeah.
That's I'm glad you said that, because as you started talking, I'm like, I actually don't think I answered the question.
That's okay. I knew
So
we'd get there.
yeah,
And
I
that
mean,
part was great too.
right, we'll dance around it eventually. It's so funny because there's this interesting juxtaposition between what initially attracts someone to my circle, right? A lot of the masterminds I'm doing at this point are for entrepreneurs, specifically women who have this like vision of a reality outside what they know. A lot of times they're still in their corporate job or they're like the beginning of the business, and they just like are drowning in trying to figure it out, or are so scared but are curious and just have like this really internal knowing. And they've seen what I've done, and they've seen who I've worked with and what they're doing now. And so I think sometimes the magnet in is like, oh, she's gonna like teach me how to run a business.
Right. Yep.
And then really what we do is
It's a Trojan horse.
right. Exactly. And like, it's so funny because every time like my groups last about 6 months and we get to the end and they're reflecting back on their growth and like just the total mindset and life leaps and shifts that they've experienced. And I'm like, do you understand why it's really hard to market this? And they're like, literally, how do you describe? They were like, I can't, like you can Google how to make an email sequence. You can Google how to build a website. You can hire someone to create content. You can, like there's all of these very tactical things, and it's very worthy to work with someone who can teach you that. But what I have found that I'm exceptional at is helping women come home to themselves and to really draw out the questions that speak into their soul and unpack. Because as new baby entrepreneurs, what we actually really need is clarity, community, and confidence. We need to figure out like, what do we actually want that's aligning with the reality we want to create, not a goal that we think is going to make us feel a different way, not what we've seen this chick do online, not what our mother-in-law thinks, not what the girl down the street, right? We need to talk through these ideas to normalize them, because a lot of times, especially in these small towns and rural communities, like the thought patterns that these women are on are so different than what they're seeing represented in their day-to-day conversations. And so that's where that community aspect comes in, is like helping them like really feel like they're not crazy in the most simple terms. And then the confidence to go and do the scary things, right? I'm use this example a lot right now. My 1-year-old's learning to walk, and I foolishly like 3 months ago was like, she'll be walking by next week. Like so often we talk about baby steps as if they're insignificant. Like her steps are so big and so brave, but they are in the moment small, and she falls a lot and she just stands right back up and smiles, right? Like but helping them really have the accountability to themselves and each other to take these aligned, big, brave, yet simple steps to move forward. So that's the work that I'm currently doing on the entrepreneurial space. The retreats that I've hosted, my last one was in March of this year, and it was ultimately centered around helping women figure out what they really want and then figure out the action plan to move forward. And it's funny because when I started it, I thought it was going to be very entrepreneurial. And then some women's like number one goal was like, I need to start therapy.
Wow.
Or like, my marriage is in shambles and we have got to fix this. Or like, I really hate myself and nothing else is going to work unless I really develop this self-love and inner knowing. And so, I can see myself doing in-person gatherings, retreats in the future that are, I've just learned, this is what we do as entrepreneurs, right? Like when I hosted my first retreat, I was like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like I have this idea, we're going to like mastermind, come to Destin. It's going to be wonderful. And like how 10 people decided that they were just going to do that.
Amazing, right?
Beyond me, right? But I've learned so much about messaging, and like, I was so afraid at that point in time to exclude someone that I was like, this is for anyone. And all the people ended up there who were supposed to, but going forward, like I have more clarity than ever around these are the exact types of people that I want to magnetize to this specific experience, and then know and trust that they will move through it and get out of it exactly what's meant for them. But that's just kind of part of this entrepreneurial world, is like we just jump in delusional
and then figure it out.
And then we figure it out, and you have to, right? Like there's some element of like planning, and you can sit down with strategy people, you can work on your branding, but at the end of the day, like we're all just out here on our own journeys. And so
Well, I
Yeah.
love too, like you actually, like you held the first one. That was amazing. Like a lot
Mhm.
of people would have freaked themselves out and not done it, but you did
Yeah.
it. And while you were there, it's like, it sounds like the more of your people that you talk with, the more you
Mhm.
understand, like, here's what they actually need and
Yes.
want. And I can do that,
Mhm.
and that
Yeah.
wouldn't, you can't do that in a vacuum. It's not a
Right.
hypothetical. I mean, you could try
Mhm.
it. You might land by luck on the same right thing, but probably
Yes.
not.
Yes, very much so. And like I travel a lot to speak as well. And I love those because I get like the real in the moment feedback
Mm,
and like the real life examples and the real life drawing out. And like most of my programs are virtual and like hallelujah, we exist in a time where that's an option. Like
yeah.
we have access to community and ideas that our mothers and grandmothers could never have
Not in a
envisioned,
million years.
right?
Yeah.
But there is just magic that happens when you are face to face and looking into someone's soul and like helping them extract what they can't even uncover on their own because they're so jaded by what's in front of them. So,
For sure. Oh, that's incredible. Oh my gosh. And oh, wow, so do people, they'll work in a mastermind with you, they'll do the
mhm.
retreat. Do you also have one-on-one or is it
Yep, I do. I do. I have like a one-on-one component that aligns with my masterminds, and I do take some one-on-one clients. I really thrive in a group setting. A lot of my one-on-one clients I work with are kind of like an extension of that, but
sure.
I do reserve some white space in my calendar for those types of people. But I know
That's great.
I love. I think we're just really meant to do life together, and
I
we
think
have
so.
become so detached from that.
Mhm.
I just think about the women who sat around fires and
Mm,
shared stories and like in every civilization ever, like we were not so isolated. And
yeah.
so there is this really deep healing that happens when women come together, even if they think it's going to be to teach them steps 1 through 10 on growing their business.
Exactly. Surprise.
And they're like, oh my gosh, I've never said that out loud. I've
Mm,
never cried in front of someone before. I've
wow.
never like written that down. Like, where did that come from? And I'm like, people say magic isn't real, but I see it every day.
Yeah, for sure. I love that saying. And I mean, it's like the old laundry, time,
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, everybody gather. We're just, we don't
Mm-hmm.
have that. And you're creating that. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, beautiful thing, Emily.
Thank you.
That's changing lives. That's
Yeah.
where it is. That's
Mhm.
got to be deeply, deeply satisfying for you.
It is. It is. And I just last night got back from a retreat that I hosted alongside one of the girls who came to my retreat.
Oh,
And
neat.
she owns a salon in South Carolina. And she's been through my retreat. She's been through a few masterminds with me. And she's like, the girls that work for me need this. And so she
Mm,
brought in these like 20, 22, 27-year-old girls and like showed them this journey that she's been on and like pushed
yeah.
them in their own, like we did a whole workshop and stuff. And I'm like, when we are doing work in some position of impact, we know that there's a ripple effect. Like I
Yeah.
see it, I hear it, like when your reality is shifting, when you're doing things, but like to actually sit there and be like, I am here. These girls are here today because 4 years ago I was brave enough to start an Instagram account.
Yes. You
And
saw the ripple completely with your
yes,
own eyeballs, like face to
yes,
face, elbow to elbow.
yes.
Wow.
It was wild.
That's
Wild.
amazing. Oh,
Mhm.
I love that. I love that so much. Man. All right. Now that kind of thing will keep you going for a while, right? What in your business, if I could have, like, if I had a magic wand and you're like,
Mhm.
Sue, fix that. What business thing would be that?
Oh my gosh, I would just love to outsource my website to you from a very tactical standpoint.
What about it? Like keeping it running or putting stuff in it or what?
Well, I've been like really through this like whole rebranding evolution as like my understanding of the work that I do is so deepened. I wrote the messaging for my website when I was like a little baby entrepreneur and I was like, I think this is what I'm doing. And it's not like I'm doing radically different things than what my website says. It just like doesn't feel as aligned as where I'm at now. And so I've gone through this whole rebranding process, which was so amazing. And like the last piece of it is this darned website. And you know how much time I've spent trying, I just need to pay
Oh,
someone, honestly, but
I get you. I get you. And it's like it's close. It's like like a bad clone maybe of like who you like. It's close, but there's something that's just
there's so
cringy
much
a little bit because
more.
there's so much more. Yeah.
And like the colors aren't right anymore, and the
Right.
messaging's not quite right, and there's so much more to the story. Anyway, but that's a really tangible
Yeah.
thing. But otherwise, you know, I think that in going through this evolution, as I think a lot of entrepreneurs do if we give ourselves permission,
Mhm.
right? Because I think it's also really easy in entrepreneurship to put us in new boxes.
Mm.
You know, we just create, we like left the 9 to 5 or said no to like the traditional path so we could have like so freedom and autonomy, and instead we just like built ourselves golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
But when we give ourselves permission to evolve and follow our joy and realign, there is, you know, this internal shift that's happening, and then bringing our business up to where we are currently at in our journey and evolution. And like you said, like there is so much I have shared of this story along the way. But there's also pieces of it that I've held really close to my heart as I have really worked through my own personal awakenings and evolutions. And so it's interesting as you deepen or as you expand outward or as you kind of flow into a slightly new direction. It's like, well, how do I do that without pissing someone off?
Yeah.
How do I do that without people being mad at me? How do I do that
Yeah.
and like, you know, articulate it well? Like we get so caught up in this, I don't know, like very present reality. And I logically know it's all about trust and just do it. But like
Mhm.
easier said than done, right? And so that's
Yeah.
just currently what I'm working through as I have expanded and deepened and reawakened is like, okay, what I have been doing has been serving me really well, but also what else is possible? And what does that look like? It's like stepping into the unknown all over again, but with a lot more confidence and information.
For sure. Oh, that's wild. Now you have the evidence too if you've done this before and it's safe
Absolutely.
and you can and
Mhm,
your people have
mhm.
you.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Man. All right. Now, I think that I saw that you run and take notes and get ideas. Like, all right, first, that's amazing. But, all right, tell me though, like, what is your favorite way of getting outdoors and like,
Mhm.
where are you most likely to get that, like, the download of great ideas?
Yes. Okay. So in my day-to-day life, we live on a farm in the middle of Flat, Illinois. And so best case scenario, like I would love to be hiking in the forest, but that is
Mhm.
just not where I live on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis. And so it is almost daily, I would say daily with the exception of when life happens,
Mhm.
to go out first thing in the morning after my kids get on the bus and go on a walk on one of our rural back roads.
Mhm.
And that is just my time. That is,
Nice.
you know, getting fresh air on my face, getting that sunshine in my eyeballs. That is the bilateral movement of walking. That is, you know, getting tuned into the world outside of the four walls of my office, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes that is being really quiet and still and processing and trying to figure out a problem. Sometimes that is on like a Marco Polo app catching up with my friends. Sometimes that is listening to a podcast about something I'm really interested in or something that's just for fun. Sometimes that's listening to music, right? I don't really put any expectations that it has to be a certain way because oftentimes those ideas that you're talking about spark when you least expect it. And I think the idea or the thing that you're referencing is earlier this year, I was kind of at beginning of noticeable evolution and I was feeling really stuck with content creation. Like, what do I even say? I'm so sick of saying all the things I used to say, but I don't know what I want to say yet. What does this look like? And at the time I was training for a half marathon and there was a run I needed to do that I'd just been putting off for 3 days. And finally I set out at almost sunset to just do it. And it was about halfway through that run that like an idea just plopped right into my head. And so you can't let those go away because they just disappear into the ethers if you do. And so I pulled out my notes app, which is an athletic. I do not identify as a massively athletically coordinated person, but
But you managed. You didn't die.
and it does pass the time. And I just don't stress out about like, you know, punctuation or spelling or anything. I just get out my notes app one-handed and I'm like And it was this content idea that I literally ran with for probably a month and a half. It was super simplified. And it was just like, it was like me running to find this type of person. And at the time I was relaunching one of my masterminds. So some of them were really focused on the messaging around that. Some of it was exploring some of the things that I was thinking about that I'm like, does anyone else think about this? And so every reel was just like me running to find this type of person, rerunning to find this, rerunning to find this. And before I had even gotten home, I had like 25 of these written out in my notes app.
Amazing.
And so for the like foreseeable future after that, it was like every time I went on a run, I just recorded myself, which is a feat in itself in the middle of nowhere. And then just plop that text onto it and then could expand on it in the caption. So it was like, it was just enough to like get me back in the flow of content creation when I was feeling super uninspired. And it prompted a lot of conversations around the things that I'm like, I'm kind of curious about. I'm really starting to think about this. I don't have it fully developed yet, but like throwing out like a raft, like who else is out there? Which really gave me a lot more confidence into bringing new conversations on to my podcast and allowing myself to explore deeper these new thought patterns or mindsets or ideas or conversations. And so, just one example, but my walking time is sacred. And I go through ebbs and flows and seasons where I run in this like postpartum year. Honestly, I was training for a half marathon earlier this year and got about halfway through it. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. Right. Yeah. But years ago, I would have been like, I said, I'm going to do it. So I'm going to do it. I said it out loud and I'm like, this is not serving me. This is not honoring me. Walking is great. And so now I walk. And will I run again? Yeah. I really want to do like a mountain trail run.
Ooh.
That's like one of my loose goals for next year. So I am going to need to pick up a running habit again. But so that's my time. And then, I want to get outside in the forest as often as I can. And I also acknowledge that in this season of life with 3 young kids and a farm and a business, it's not an everyday thing, and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I love that you have you can actually, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I get great ideas, but you can actually point at, I was on this thing, had this walk, and this happened, and then I did this thing, and then you could probably even attach a dollar amount to it.
Yeah.
What that idea was worth.
That's
amazing.
I mean, I think I maybe had put this in the notes that I filled out for you before, but like that was the launch point for these specific masterminds I've done this year that have generated, I wrote it in the form, I want to say like $80,000 or something. That's
amazing though.
We maybe should fact check that.
Well, we'll fact check. But I mean, so it did more than $1.
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, what an incredible thing to also have that evidence in your brain that, wait, this is not just frivolous me, this is actually really productive, very fruitful time. And it's worthy of this priority in my life. That is fantastic. I love what you're doing. I would love to talk to you all day. All right. So, okay, let's stay on track. Where do people find out more?
Absolutely. So the platform I'm the most active is Instagram at Emily Rushel, REUSHEL. Beyond that, if you really want to dive deeper into what's going on in my brain or what I'm super curious about right now and bringing on guests for, like I said, my podcast is called Gather in Growth. It's all about bringing people together to grow in so many different directions in whatever way is in most alignment for them. And it's available on all podcast platforms. You can go to my website, emilyrushel.com. It's in massive need of a facelift, but it is there. And otherwise, I have all sorts of ideas ruminating for 2025. It's like the first year I don't have it all mapped out yet, which feels really liberating. But I'm getting together with some of my business friends next week to start putting some pen to paper and some loose plans in place. So stay tuned for that if you are interested in, I think a lot of it's going to be about helping women and especially entrepreneurs really come home to themselves to show up in full alignment and authenticity in their business. There's just so many conversations I'm having with women like me who are, for the first time in their life, like figuring out their cycles and how to like
Yeah.
align their businesses with it, or like human design, or, hormones, like all of these factors. Like I think, and I'm making mass generalizations here through the lens of my own experience, that like we have been taught to operate as robots, which is
Yeah.
unhealthy for people in
Anybody.
general,
Yeah.
but especially women.
Yeah.
And then we're left being like, why do I feel crazy? Well,
Mm.
your hormones are out of whack. You're about to start your period and you don't even know what's going on. Like,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
working totally against your human design. Like, no wonder you're just feeling so much resistance. And so, one of the programs I'm really excited to create is around all of that. And I think it will be the first time that I'm calling in expertise from different people and kind of doing a hybrid type
Wow.
thing. So that's in the idea tank.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot more to come. So
That
I would
is so
love,
cool. I love this. I love what you're doing. I think this is so needed. I mean, the country mouse or the city mouse, either, we
yeah.
need this, and
Hmm.
you're having these real conversations. You're opening this up. You're giving people that space to figure out, what do I really want? What is,
Yeah.
that's just phenomenal,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's, the deeper I get into this work, the more I see like we're so much more alike than we are
Yeah.
different.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, whether you live in a cornfield or in a high rise, like those feelings of what am I even doing here? Does anyone really see me for me? Am I living in authenticity? Like, how do I find my purpose in the world and also like buy groceries?
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
that. And so, yeah, I'm really, really passionate about what I do, and I get to work with the coolest people on the planet. So,
Clearly, that is really, really cool, man. All right, don't go anywhere. I'm gonna chop that. There we go.